our other Facebook groups up in here before it's officially time to go. Got the spinning wheels going. Let's try one more time for that one. Got the exclamation point, not what we want. There we go. 1 and 2. Welcome in, everybody. It is Wednesday night, the 18th of January, 2023, and it's time for an episode of Mile High Insiders. I am Nick Kendell, and joined by, as always, for these Wednesday evening shows, Luke Patterson. Luke, how you doing? How getting everything lined up for your trips across the U.S. as we are full swing in the off season?
Yeah, man. Yeah, tickets are booked, flights are booked to be down there in Vegas, and then for the Shrine Bowl, and then seniors. So things are going good, man. Fast and furious, baby.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be a lot of fun to see what happens here this offseason. Luke's going to head down to the Shrine Bowl, go down to the Senior Bowl. Scott will also be at the Senior Bowl, so should be a good offseason. And we got a lot to talk about today still. The head coaching search. We'll find out what happens here for the Broncos. And Dylan Vark's given us some news here saying Dennis Allen was already announced as the Saints head coach. So one less position there for the Broncos to compete with, I guess. And Dennis Allen, Broncos country, you guys should recognize that name. Dennis Allen was the defensive coordinator for Denver for a number of years, I believe, under John Fox, and then went over to the Raiders and got fired from the Raiders, as everyone does. And I guess I shouldn't throw stones in a glass house right now. But yeah, Dennis Allen to there.
Yeah, man.
And also,
everybody's on Saints watch, pretty much.
Yeah. Yeah, 100% everybody's on Saints watch right now. We also got news from Scott saying Donatel was fired, or another former Broncos defensive coordinator. Donatel fired from the Minnesota Vikings. That was a terrible defense this season, so no shocks on that one. And also Dylan also comes in and says, "Sup Broncos country, make sure you guys hit the like button on the way in, share on all platforms, and subscribe if you haven't already." We got our guy Kevin Gray saying, "Evening Broncos country, Nick, Luke, and Scott. Hope the leaks are favorable, but I'm fine with Quinn, K-Win. Q-Win. Actually, that'd be a good name for him if the Broncos get some wins and he's good. I know Quinn isn't guaranteed, but a top three pick. We also got Mark Hoynak coming in saying Panthers offered Sean Payton anything he wants. Tough to beat that. Yeah, it will be tough to beat that. And Sean Payton was meeting with the Panthers today in Manhattan, mainly meeting with David Tepper. Any thoughts on that? I mean, I know that there was Ben Johnson was linked to the Panthers for a while, and then all of a sudden he's back to the Lions, to the offensive coordinator. Should we read anything into that? What's going on with Sean Payton's linkage to the Carolina Panthers?
Yeah, because it's in division, right? Everybody wonders about that. How can Sean Payton essentially get traded to the Raiders, division rival, right? If you're the Broncos, Sean Payton owns your rights, or excuse me, Broncos own your rights. How do you go to that division rival? That's going to be hard to tell. We see interdivisional trades happen. It hasn't happened for a long time with a head coach, but Bill Belichick is the first thing that comes to mind, right? With the Jets. Yeah. I don't want to say it's not a possibility, because when you have crazy, stupid money, the way Tepper and the Panthers do, crazy, stupid things can get done. But you know what, Broncos country? The Broncos have some crazy, stupid money too. I'm talking crazier and stupider than Tepper's money. You've got unlimited resources. And I know Mr. Unlimited, he was kind of a flop this year. But you've got Sean Payton making these public comments, Nick, about fixing Russell Wilson. You've got a report that we're going to mention on milehighhuddle.com today coming out of Louisiana, stating that Sean Payton was very impressed with the Broncos ownership specifically. And that's one thing that he highlighted a couple weeks ago on Fox on the NFL Sunday show or whatever. Management, ownership, those are things that are very important to him, having a quarterback in place. So I'm certainly very excited. Sean Payton was always my number one candidate. He still is. What was your reaction though with Jim Harbaugh? Because I thought that came down a lot quicker than I thought it would, that he kind of pulled his application, if you will, and will be returning to Michigan. But what's your initial thought on Jim Harbaugh out of the head coaching race for the Broncos?
Disappointment, because he was my number one, and I thought there was a clear line of demarcation after Jim Harbaugh and Sean Payton and the rest of these candidates. So
yeah,
I don't feel like we got housed by the media. Mike Kliss's article came out yesterday, made it sound like Jim Harbaugh was the guy that this ownership group and this team really liked, but the Broncos weren't quite ready to give him a contract offer before running through this interview process, and that was too long of a wait for Jim Harbaugh. So if they really wanted him, maybe they should have flown out to Ann Arbor or something and offered him a contract there. But they were more interested in their process, and Jim's back to the Big Ten. So we'll see what happens with them.
And the process was weird to begin with, right? I mean, you
Mhm.
mentioned it. I mean, it was, I think, a feeling out process between both Jim Harbaugh and the Broncos, and that's why it was virtual. I think we can definitely speculate on that now.
Yeah.
But Mike made it very well known. Mike's been very good to me in my dealings here in Denver, but he loved Jim Harbaugh. Mike Kliss
Yeah.
wanted Jim Harbaugh, and he's been on the record of saying that. Now, he did predict by January 27th last week that Sean Payton would be the guy if in that critical ball. It's going to be interesting to see with the playoffs continuing to go on. I mean, I was shocked to see the Cowboys do what they did to the Tampa Bay Bucks. Call me crazy. It wasn't just the kicker. It was to see Dak play that high at that high level consistently, to see the coaching staff kind of come together and do really good things for the Cowboys. I'm not used to it, Nick. So I was already kind of thinking Dan Quinn, no way, man. There's no way all of a sudden Dan Quinn shoots up as possibly one of two big names, Sean Payton and Dan Quinn. I don't want to be disrespectful, though, and dismiss. Obviously, you guys covered Carl and you last night that Raheem Morris got an interview on Tuesday as well. Dan
Yeah.
Quinn is going to get an interview Friday. And then some guy named DeMeco Ryans, one of the
I love
hottest
DeMeco.
defensive coordinator. I know your
Mhm.
guy, one of the hottest defensive coordinators out there with the San Francisco 49ers. He's going to interview on Thursday. So it's not over.
No, not and those two guys are going up against each other on Sunday night. I think the
How
best
about
game of this
that?
week. I'm so excited. I mean, Dan Quinn versus Kyle Shanahan, former head coach versus the offensive coordinator there. I mean,
Sign
God,
me
it'd
up.
be it's going to be a great game. I'm really excited for that. Michael Ronquillo coming in with the stars. Thank you so much, Michael. Saying good evening, Nick and Luke on Mile High
Yeah.
Insiders. Go Broncos, go Michael. We appreciate you. Got our
What's
guy
up,
Mike
Mike?
Woodward coming in saying evening, everyone. Always good to see you. Mike S coming in saying what's up, Broncos country. Hope the Broncos can get Sean Payton. Yeah, we'll see what happens. Broncos stuff coming in. Oh, sorry about that, Scott. Go ahead and pull up the one you did there. We got Chris Hernandez coming in saying
Chris.
good stuff, fellas. Always good to see Chris Hernandez coming in with the support, with the salute, and the orange and blue hearts. Good to see you,
Yeah.
Chris. Thank you so much, man. We really do appreciate it. And our guy Mo, the Smooth Killer, Muhammad Badri, with the super sticker. We appreciate you, Mo. Hope you're doing well. Hope Abe Malik is doing well as also. Fatherhood treating you well, and hope we have a good season with you supporting us here. Joshua, man, I hope the Peyton stuff is true. So,
Ooh, I love
Luke,
it, dude.
what have
A
you been
lot of
hearing?
optimism. A lot of optimism with Sean Payton right now, and that's cool.
Yeah.
I'm a little surprised, to be honest with you, because I feel like so many people were in on Jim Harbaugh, but maybe that's just shifted over to
Yeah.
Sean Payton, because it's crazy in this divisive world, Nick. You can actually like more than one candidate, and sometimes I need to make
No.
myself remember that. Yeah, I know. I was digging in on Sean Payton, DeMeco Ryans a little bit today. It's what I'm not hearing that's making me feel like things are going good over there. George Payton is notorious for keeping things locked down. And I'm not just going to make up a bunch of news. I'm not going to say that I'm hearing rumors. Look, I think the Broncos are seriously digging into what the compensation would look like to get Sean Payton from the Saints. We've got an article up right now, milehighhuddle.com. Chad Jensen put out there citing a New Orleans website, NOLA.com's Jeff Duncan provided a little bit of feedback for Broncos country on how Tuesday's interview went with Sean Payton, saying, quote, the interviews with the Texans and the Broncos went well, according to sources. Payton was particularly impressed with the Broncos group, who he met with for several hours. He likes majority owner Rob Walton and the management team he has assembled in Denver. So I think it's been very businesslike for Sean Payton and the Denver Broncos. I think they both like each other. They're sniffing around each other, but neither want to commit just because you don't want to get embarrassed on the national stage. You're going to see Sean Payton, I think, continue with some of these interviews. I think Carolina right at the end of the week. I'm not sure about Houston. Has that been scheduled?
Peyton's had a Zoom interview with Houston. I've heard conflicting reports as far as how that went. There's been a
Okay.
lot of people saying that you can just tell the dysfunction in the organization, and that's not likely to happen. I think right now I would put it I think Arizona's out. I think Houston is out. I think that there's a chance. There's three possibilities now: Denver, duh; Carolina, duh; or saying, you know what? I don't really want any of these spots this year. I'm going to go back to Fox for a season. And that was a big thing
Yeah.
with Tom Pelissero's. I guess he talked on NFL Insiders saying that right now things are lining up for the Broncos. However, big caveat to his thing is if Peyton decides to come out. I think that's carrying a lot of weight. And I think there's a chance that Peyton might wait a season to see what happens with Sean McVay, to see what happens with Brandon Staley. And, he's enjoying his time in Los Angeles with Fox. So I'm a little bit nervous, honestly. I like the optimism in the chat. I'm nervous.
Yeah, it's exciting. It's nerve-wracking. It's a new chapter of your Denver
Yeah.
Broncos, and we just don't know where it's going to head. I mean, we're still trying to get used to this new ownership group, trying to figure out if this GM is going to be here long term. If Sean Payton gets here, what's that cost going to be? That's the second question. Sean Payton linked to the Broncos, mutual interest. Okay, that's all good and fine, but what's the compensation look like? That could be a deal breaker for not only the team but the fan base too. James Moss coming in here with a generous $5 super. Thank you so much for joining MHI, James. I'm curious why Sean Payton wants out of New Orleans. Why choose one dumpster fire over another? Is it as simple as he just doesn't want to be there? That is an excellent question, James, and I'm so glad that you asked. Nick, why does Sean Payton want out of New Orleans?
God, that is a great question. I haven't actually even thought about that. I mean, he obviously walked away for a bit. The the way the roster and the cap is set up for New Orleans is a pretty hard spot to win right now. It's a team that's having to pay their bills as far as trying to chase that Super Bowl at the end of Drew Brees' career there, and the
Yep.
credit card bills come home. So I guess how just the roster and the salary cap is set up is a big negative. I don't know if there's anything there with the relationship between him and Mickey Loomis or anybody else there in New Orleans.
Mm-hmm.
Haven't heard anything like that, but I mean that's honest to God, the whole time we've been here, like, why is he leaving New Orleans to begin with? Why is he stepping away? And why is he going to a new opportunity? I mean, he already had taken a year away from New Orleans prior when he was suspended for a year after Bounty Gate and came back. I mean, it could have been as simple as I'm going to step away for a year and come back. One thing that I have heard here is that he is good friends and really respects Dennis Allen. And if he was going to come back to New Orleans, it would be kicking Dennis Allen out. And I don't know if
Yeah.
he wants to do that to Dennis Allen. So that's a big one.
Yeah, that's a human element, and I think that's important that you bring that up, Nick, because we forget that so much. And I want to bring up the human element. Maybe that's why he wants to leave, because he's a human being and wants a different change of scenery. Did a little bit of research in Sean Payton today, just online and asking around. I mean, I didn't even know if he was married. I knew he had kids, but he's recently married within the last few years after his first divorce. So, he's a husband, he's a father. I'm sure his children are grown by now. But sometimes guys and gals and whoever you are, you just want a change of scenery. You want a new opportunity. Being in a place for 15 years, it's a significant amount of time. And I don't like or subscribe to the opinion that Sean Payton quit on the Saints. I think that in this life, you need to make choices that are for yourself and for your family and what's ultimately going to make you happy. Sean Payton, he did that this year. He dipped his toe in the broadcasting world and he kind of likes it. I got that sense kind of like you did too. If there's not a perfect situation, then he's willing to sit out again. So you look again at the Saints contract. What's that look like? Well, he's locked up until the end of the 2024 season. It makes me wonder, is New Orleans a little gun shy? Do they want to get rid of him and try to get some capital now? It's hard to say because not a lot coming out of New Orleans either.
No.
But I just have to think that the human element of wanting to start over somewhere new, wanting to be in a place where at least ownership is going to commit to you long term in a contract, you're going to get paid, you're not going to have to worry about getting fired. And hey, maybe you bring some of your old staff in. You mentioned Dennis Allen, he was with the Broncos. Well, look, man, some guy named Lombardi, the Chargers Lombardi, Joe Lombardi just got fired.
Yeah.
He was an assistant. He was an assistant for what it's worth. I'm not a Joe Lombardi expert, but he was an assistant two different times with Sean Payton with the Saints. Obviously, Vic Fangio, that name has been connected. Ed Donatel, just Scott letting us know that he just got canned. I'm thinking, okay, Vic Fangio has been connected here. What about Ed Donatel? Maybe Sean Payton would like an Ed Donatel. Weird to see these names revolving around Denver, but it kind of all comes full circle in this NFL picture, especially with the Broncos, right? Returning coaches,
Yeah.
finding success. I'd be all right with that if Uncle Vic was a DC.
The NFL is so incestual. It's insane. Phil McLaughlin coming in saying, "Good evening, Luke, Nick, and Deacon Scott. Really want Sean Payton, but would take Steichen or Ryan's. Hashtag MHH for life. Hashtag go Broncos." I don't think Steichen is happening here. Broncos haven't interviewed him yet. I wish they would have interviewed him. I wish they would have interviewed Kafka. I wish they would have interviewed Ben Johnson, but here we are.
They
They're
talked about that wide net, Nick. What the hell? George Payton's like, man, I wish I would have casted a wider net. And then Greg Penner comes in and is like, I'm leading the search. So
you know,
you mentioned a bunch of names right there that I think would have been at least worth the interview.
yeah. I mean, you also want to focus on the guys that you're most interested in because there's only a finite amount of time and those guys' time as well. But I'm just very concerned about, swinging too hard the other way. It's kind of like, was it, we can't take Josh Allen because he looks like Paxton Lynch. Okay, well, here we are today. But we got, thank you so much for the support, Phil. God bless you, man, coming in and supporting all our shows and always contributing. And also, if you guys want to be like Phil, not the contributing side, the finances, we appreciate that, Phil, but dropping a thumbs up. Phil always comes in, gives us a heart. Thanks, right Phil. Now on Facebook. We always really appreciate Phil for doing that as well. And really easy for you guys to do. We almost have 400 people in here. Drop a thumbs up. It'd be greatly appreciated. Michaela Israel, always appreciated as well. Our Mile High Huddle ladies saying, good evening, Broncos country. The wait on the head coach search is killing me. I've heard good reports today, but until something is final, I'm not getting my hopes up. Luke, I'm going to ask you right now, gun to your head. A week from now, do we have the Broncos head coach, and who is it?
Sean Payton, and you're going to be okay giving up Bradley Chubb for him and maybe a second rounder, a bag of cash or what have you. That I'm trying to just breathe that into existence, but it does feel like it's starting to get a little momentum. That's pure speculation. Now, I think it's very important that this New Orleans website, and I don't want to just call it NOLA and sound like a moron, but NOLA.com's Jeff Duncan is providing Broncos country with a little bit of feedback from that interview yesterday, saying Sean Payton was impressed with the ownership. I'm sure he was. It's not breaking news, but I'd be impressed if I met Greg Penner. I mean, the guy's rich, he's powerful, he probably has an idea of what he wants, and I'm sure it was a very high class interview. I'm sure maybe wined and dined a little bit, or look, this is a honeymoon, courting, everything's great kind of period, and nobody's gonna diss you because people want you. They're telling you compliments, and it's a cool process. I imagine it's probably really, really flattering for some of these guys. Now I have heard the argument that, you know, Sean Payton, he's arrogant, there's some Hollywood-esque to him or what have you. And maybe, but I would say if you're in the NFL, you almost have to have a little bit of arrogance with what you're doing, or just in this life, right? We all screw up. We all make mistakes, but have some conviction with what you're doing. This man knows football. He's coached in the NFL for 26 plus years. I had no idea really about his playing days, Nick, until I started looking at it today. He was an undrafted quarterback, Eastern Illinois, right? It seems like Broncos country, the connection there too, right? Shanny with some Eastern Illinois in him. Was undrafted out of 1987. This guy tried out for the Kansas City Chiefs and was a quarterback for the Bears in 1987 during the strike. And they were calling him the Spares at that point because he was a scab quarterback coming in. Threw an interception, his only interception in his career, against the Saints, a team he would later win a Super Bowl with and own his coaching rights. So things come full circle. It's very incestuous, as you mentioned it earlier. But I'd say Sean Payton. How about you?
I think it's going to be Dan Quinn. I think that it's going to, I think the Broncos are going to find, I mean, little tidbits here and there. Mike Kliss, again, circling back to him, saying that it would be roster suicide to give up picks for Sean Payton. I love Mike Kliss, but he definitely he definitely gets his info from pretty reliable and reputable sources from time to time. And if he's putting out harsh language like suicide, that to me is putting the
where's it
lead in front of you. And and he's saying like, prepare yourself. Well, the Broncos didn't do it because they couldn't afford to go get him with the draft picks. It was just too costly. So in the end, we went with Dan Quinn. So I think it's going to be Dan Quinn. I hope I'm wrong. He's fine. But not as excited about him than David Shaw or or DeMeco Ryans, or of course Sean Payton as well. We got Jetty Splash coming in. Hi, Jetty. Hope you're doing well. Always appreciate the bird picks in here. We got also coming in here. Yep, Nick was held up in traffic. Thanks, Scott. I finally got to that. I appreciate you coming in.
And on Mike, real quick, on Mike Kliss, and we're not turning this into the Mike Kliss show, but it's very important when we get these updates. And Broncos country's wanting to know what the hell happened yesterday with Sean Payton. We were all excited, waiting for the 17th. Well, the 17th came and went, and we're trying to figure out how it went. Head on over to milehighhuddle.com right now. Chad's got an article up right now. It's doing very well, letting you know a little bit of some of those things Sean Payton was impressed with. Patrick coming in, Patrick Wiltsey. Good afternoon, gents. Good afternoon to you, Patrick. Hope things are going well. Here's what I love about Mike Kliss, dude. Mike knows what he knows, and he knows what he doesn't know. And Mike is not a draft expert, self-proclaimed, right? He will say he's not a draft guru. He tries to follow the stories. He tries to get a lead and see where that goes with his resources. And he's very well respected. I look up to him and respect him as well. But look, man, draft suicide or career suicide or whatever the hell it was, roster suicide. Let's go back and look at some of these first round picks and how many of them have actually worked out. I mean, Pastor Tan, okay. Jerry Jeudy, you're trending in the right direction for sure. Noah Fant, Bradley Chubb, Garrett Bowles, Paxton Lynch. I can go on and on. Shane Ray. I mean, there have been a lot of misses by the Denver Broncos. Now, that's not saying go ahead and get rid of these first rounders because, well, it's the end of the first round and it's not going to matter anyway. The likelihood that you get a franchise player, it's not there. That's completely reckless and irresponsible, but that's where you got to find that happy medium, right? Where draft capital matters. You're already behind the curve. As much as I want Sean Payton, I'm sitting here wondering, like everybody else, Nick, what's the cost going to be?
And I've said many times on here, 2023 first, it's probably going to be 26 to 31. Fine. That's okay. Give that up. 2023 first, and the Broncos are Colts third round pick for Sean Payton too. Okay. Starting to get a little costly, but okay. I'm not in the business of giving up that 2024 first round pick though. You might be a team that is looking to move on from Russell Wilson at that point. Also, another tidbit about Sean Payton. He would be fine. He would be okay coming into work with Russell Wilson. That's not the biggest ringing endorsement I've ever heard in my life for a guy who many consider what the Broncos just gave up for him, and was on a Hall of Fame trajectory. Oh, what about his thing with Russell Wilson? Oh, he could be okay with that.
He's all right,
Yeah,
right? He's one of those things like, yeah, he's all right. That's interesting too. And, I think that's Sean Payton being smart because you don't want to play your hand either way. You don't want to come out and say, I'm the answer for Russell Wilson, and this is what I want to do and what I want to be. It's just it's funny how these things are working out because it feels like it's going so slow as the playoffs go on. And again, I didn't think Dan Quinn would be in the running because I thought Mike McCarthy would be fired by now. You look at the Chargers situation and what's going on over there with Brandon Staley, and hey, he's still employed. So it's weird for sure. Mile High Mike coming in here. Speaking of Dan Quinn and the head coaching candidates, Broncos country, be sure to hop in the live stream. Let us know who you want as head coach or who you don't want. Dan Quinn is going to be horrible if we hire him. He is a career coordinator. What tells anyone that he will be better than he was in Atlanta? Mile High Mike, I absolutely love you. One of our own, Bob Morris. I was reading Bob's tweet. He put out a really cool tweet earlier. Several pages going back and comparing Super Bowl coaches, Super Bowl coordinators, how the whole thing shakes out. And I'll be honest with you, it was completely overwhelming because we think we have an idea, right? And especially me saying, oh, Sean Payton, I love the guy. Super Bowl champ, AP coach of the year in 2006. He's got a 63% winning percentage, one game over 500 in the postseason. I'm in. Well, that doesn't mean Dan Quinn is out. Dan Quinn knows football. He's got the Cowboys playing very, very high. He's not that sexy hire for me. Sorry, Nick, I don't want a defensive guy this time around. I want an offensive guy. That's not because I don't think defenses can't win championships or anything like that, but it's because I need Russ to get fixed this year. Now, I need some of that Coach Prime time. I don't know if you've seen the videos where he's out there saying, we're going to win now. I need that now here in Denver, like immediate transformation. I'm not talking playoffs. I'm talking let's win a football game.
Yeah, it'll be tough though. I mean, if he's comes in, I think one of the big selling points for Denver is we'd love you to fix Russell Wilson, but if that's the hang up between having Sean Payton not, I'm not going to let that deter me. This is your team. It's our team still. It's our money as the ownership group. But if you don't think Russell Wilson is the guy you want long term, we'll figure it out. You're going to hopefully outlast any players on here. But we'll see what happens with that trade. Again, I'm not the biggest Dan Quinn guy. Also, I don't mind if it's a defensive guy. I don't really like how his team stacked up in Atlanta in the post-Kyle Shanahan era. Blame Thomas Dimitroff. He deserves probably a majority of the blame, but still, if there was a defense, DVOA-wise, I think they averaged being 26th in the NFL over his career in Atlanta as the head coach, and they never finished higher than 17th. Which is never top half defense in the NFL. And the offense fell off pretty dramatically after Kyle Shanahan left. I don't know. And also, it just smells like a leftover fart. The fact that they interviewed him last year and he didn't even not even considered, they brought in Nathaniel Hackett. Like, what? It's so gross. Like,
by the way, we got Nathaniel Hackett news today, Nick, right? Exciting stuff. Interviewing out there in Gangrene, New Jersey land. To try to get a job. But I hear you. It doesn't move the needle, right? I mean, it just, and what I've been able to gather about Dan Quinn, which isn't much, just talking to some former players of his off the record, I don't know, man. Like, they're like, we love him, but bumper sticker mentality, he's got to have the slogans. Okay, we're all children, right? We got to buy into somewhat of an immature culture aspect, and iron strengthens iron. That did it in Super Bowl 50, but it was the people driving that slogan that actually did it. Those words fall on hollow and deaf ears if they're not backed up by the mouth that's speaking them, so to speak. Benjamin Flores coming in. Speaking of mouth, my mouth running all kinds of word salad. Benjamin Flores, thank you for joining MHI with Scott, Nick, and I. Look at that. That rhymed.
Yeah, thank you so much, Benjamin. We appreciate you coming in, and hopefully you're having a good week. And we appreciate you also did say hello to Patrick Wiltsey. I mentioned earlier, out into the nether. Hey, I'm starting to run low on coffee, and Patrick hooks me up with Lion Coffee Company. So shout out to Patrick. We appreciate you. Jay Maddie 24 is coming in saying looking for 2 first-round picks. There was some talk about that in an article with, I don't remember who it was. I would love to credit them, but mentioned that New Orleans is looking for a package similar to that of the John Gruden trade, that where the Raiders received 2 firsts and 2 thirds, I believe. We'll see if that comes to that. If it is for me, I'm not giving up that 2024 first round pick, because you could fall flat next year and you're looking at a top 5 pick again. There's a big difference between where this 49ers pick is going to end up and the top 5 pick. I mean, it would take maybe 4 or 5 picks of where the Broncos are going to end up getting for them to get back up to that 5th overall, maybe about 4. That's just a massive difference. It's exponential decay in terms of the value from the top of the draft on down. So I'm okay giving up the 49ers one. I'm okay giving up a 2nd round pick next year. Not going to give up that first, because if it ends up being a top 3 pick and you are watching another team pick Caleb Williams, Drake May, Marvin Harrison Jr., absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Yeah, it's going to hurt. And you've talked about it, and we've talked about it on these airwaves as long as we've had a show. The rookie contract, that is so valuable. And like, you've got to have multiple guys that are starters for you under that rookie contract, not just the backups, not just guys that are nice stories. You have to have concrete young guys that are up and coming in that rookie contract. So you don't have to go out and break the bank for every free agent trying to replace positions, trying to put your finger in the dam. It hasn't worked for Denver. So to give up so much draft capital on a ton of unknowns, it's really tough when you're already in the hole. George Fox coming in there. Speaking of foxhole, never in the foxhole with George Fox alone. I'm not a Quinn fan either. Denver Broncos for life. Yeah, I just don't get the sense, Nick, that the Dan Quinn moves the needle for Broncos country. And I mean, you talked about it, going over like a wet fart in church, or he smells like a stale
like
fart.
Like,
that's
like,
Dan Quinn.
Yeah,
he's around, right? He's around. You don't really want him to leave, but he's still kind of there, I guess. That's Dan Quinn. How embarrassing is it if you're the Denver Broncos and George Payton being like, "What's up, man? I interviewed you last year, didn't pick you. Can I get an interview with you this year while you're in the playoffs getting ready to go play the San Francisco 49ers? I mean, not a good look. I wonder already, like, not saying there would be a power struggle or anything like that, but what's Dan Quinn think of the Denver Broncos right now? Try to look at some things from his perspective. I'm sure he'd be happy to get another head coaching gig, and maybe he somehow feels the need for the Arizona Cardinals, the Carolina Panthers, the Houston Texans, or the Indianapolis Colts.
Certainly possible, and he's done a great job with that Dallas defense. Don't get me wrong, and he did a good job with the Seahawks defense. Again, he's a fine candidate, but this Broncos team did come out and said they're looking to make a big swing, a big splash, whatever type of description you want to use, and it's not. It just simply is not hiring Quinn, but maybe he's what the team needs. I mean, I've been not as big about him being sold as an equivalent there, but we'll see. We had that $2 super coming in. Thank you so much, saying that we're the Chris Chances saying
Chris,
Luke, Nick, and Scott still the best in the business. Thank you so much, Chris. We appreciate you coming in and supporting us. Even if we're not the best in the business, we appreciate you, boosting our egos a bit as our heads get bigger live on air for you guys. KB82 coming in saying Dan Quinn is John Fox 2.0.
Interesting. I like it. I want to have this conversation. Kenneth, appreciate you joining us, man. Hopefully things are going well. I completely agree with this and can go either way with it, right? Because John Fox had a lot of success in the NFL. But was he ever able to win the big one? That's the question. A lot of wins for John Fox in this league, but no rings, right? I mean, maybe as an assistant somewhere, I could be completely mistaken.
John Fox did it longer than Dan Quinn did. He did it over multiple iterations where most of his success wasn't during his tenure tied to a guy who's now probably the second best offensive mind in football. In Kyle Shanahan, him or Andy Reid, I won't fight you either way on that one. They're both incredible. And also he his defenses averaged, I talked about earlier, was Dan Quinn's defenses averaged like in the mid-20s in terms of DVOA. John Fox's defense over his longer tenure averaged 9th overall, and he had 3 in the top 3 in terms of DVOA. It just was his side of the ball was much better. Now, again, it's a marriage between the talent acquisition, evaluating the talent, who the general manager brings in, but his side of the ball was much better when he oversaw it as the head coach than what Dan Quinn had. Now, would that be the same this time? I don't know, but that's the data we have to go off of.
Yeah, and one thing that's interesting, and you're exactly right. Josh Fox has done it a lot longer than Dan Quinn, and definitely had a longer resume by the time he got to Denver. But the interesting thing about the John Fox hire, it was attached with the John Elway hire, so you got the big splash at a different level, right? Mm-hmm. Broncos country's reeling from Josh McDaniels and the hell that he put the Denver Broncos through. You've got Pat Bowlen, whose health wasn't doing great at that time, God rest his soul, and a really tumultuous time in the franchise's history. So to get John Fox didn't move the needle a ton because Broncos country was willing to look the other way. You got John Elway. Maybe Broncos country is okay with that happening with Dan Quinn if you got someone like, I don't know, Peyton Manning, right? But that's really reaching for the stars there. Peyton's going to be out there in Las Vegas here in a couple weeks coaching the Pro Bowl with his brother. I don't think he's like getting ready or arming up to gear a 2023 NFL regular season run in a capacity that is the Broncos brass. I don't see it right now. It's really hard to say though, because we don't have a lot of information to go on. I mean, real bad boys move in silence, right? That's what Biggie used to say. Well, man, the Broncos are moving in silence. Sean Payton moving in a little bit of silence. I don't know what's going to happen. Ashish KCE coming in. Hi guys. I'm not for hiring these defensive minds again for head coach because the same problem will exist. What are they doing to fix Russell Wilson in the offense? The biggest mistake was not hiring Kyle Shanahan as head coach, a quarterback whisperer, fixing offenses, etc. He would check so many boxes. Defensive coach, let's say DeMeco Ryans gets a hard, strong look. You're number one of your top guys for this job that you really, really like. Sell me on DeMeco Ryans as head coach of the Denver Broncos.
Well, shout out to Benjamin Solak on The Ringer. He just did a piece on DeMeco Ryans talking about just what an absolutely brilliant football mind he was, coming from Alabama, drafted by the Houston Texans, and immediately getting that team in the right place, going to the Eagles. They actually had 2 different game plans every single week. They had the generic bread and butter, game plan, and then they had the DeMeco Ryans one because nobody else could run the defense and set guys up the right play. He's calling out plays before the snap. I mean, you guys should really go check out the piece in The Ringer. And then they talk about the players literally saying, like, I would die for DeMeco Ryans. I love this guy.
I saw that on Twitter, and that's rare. That is super rare that you hear that from human beings in this life. So that alone got my attention. I'll have to check it out. You said it's on The Ringer?
Yep, on The Ringer, Benjamin Solak talks about DeMeco Ryans and says that, like, if there's somebody in this coaching cycle that I'm willing to bet on based on the intelligence, the work ethic, and how players respond to him, it's DeMeco. Wow. He's, I know he's a defensive coach. He's the only first-time head coach the Broncos are interviewing this cycle, which I think also says something. And I think my biggest concern about DeMeco Ryans, when you're looking at head coach, and a lot of times we do this, I'm definitely guilty of this as well, as we just look at the name of who the head coach is.
Yeah.
But it's not just the head coach, it's the staff they bring in as well. Like maybe Nathaniel Hackett, if he brought in a better staff around him, is still here. But instead, he brought in the youngest inexperienced staff ever, and dysfunction is abound, and he's out. Who is DeMeco Ryans bringing around him? That's a big question.
And maybe his homies in San Fran that we're all like, Kyle Shanahan, I love him, you love him. Well, surely his assistants are doing pretty well, right? I mean, you look at the ascension with DeMeco Ryans just with the San Francisco 49ers. I mean, what was he, a assistant coach 2 years ago? And now he's running arguably the best defense in the NFL, making a postseason run. Man, that's pretty impressive. And I didn't know he was that type of player. I don't know his preparation. I guess I didn't know that.
His intelligence, his preparation. I mean, he also did it when he was. That was a league of linebackers where everybody was 6'4", 250, and he was getting it done at 6'1", 230. And it wasn't because he was faster than everybody. He was a good athlete. Don't get me wrong, but he was beating guys with his above the neck. And quick ascension at San Francisco. I think he's a phenomenal candidate, and I'd love to be in the interview. I almost feel, it's going to be really interesting to see what Dan Quinn does, because we have DeMeco Ryans tomorrow interview, and then Dan Quinn on Friday in Dallas. But first, we got Gary Palmer right now, $9.99 Super, saying, evening, Luke, Nick, and Scott. I sure hope we
Buddy.
land Sean Payton, as I don't see a real long-term prospect after him. You never know until you know. We evaluate prospects. We evaluate players on tape. There's not tape of these guys. It's the whole system. We're trying to judge them on their system, and it's even harder because there's so many variables, but it's even harder for guys that haven't been head coaches before, especially ones where the variables around them change. So we're all trying to make a best educated guess here, but we don't know. Sean Payton, it's going to cost the most for a reason, the most sure thing, but he might not be the best coach out of the guys that the Broncos have interviewed. I mean, I would say here's a question for you. First, Jasmine coming in 1999. Jasmine killed it for us last night, saying, "What's up, guys?" Thank you so much, Jasmine. What would you say to me if I said that Sean Payton doesn't end up being the best head coach out of the ones the Broncos have interviewed this cycle?
Why?
Just like the odds, like that's Sean Payton.
Oh, you're saying the odds.
Yeah,
he's
do you
not
think
the
that's
leading.
probable? Would that be wild to you?
That he's not the leader in the clubhouse? Yeah, that would be 100% wild to me.
That like 10 years from now, we look back and like, okay, the Broncos got Sean Payton, but actually DeMeco Ryans is far and away the head coach. Like we wish we would have gotten that way instead.
Ooh, I'm willing to go there. I think that's a safe bet to say that I would be willing to lean on the proven, and I hate saying that, especially coming into draft season, right? Because I don't want to condemn or damn DeMeco Ryans. You know, you just told me how smart he was off the field, and that's him as a player. I can only imagine how much smarter and better equipped he is for the game of football and managing men under Kyle Shanahan, spending time with that. I mean, man, you could be looking at a monster. I'd be willing to go with Sean Payton on that bet, just because I don't know. You could blame it on John Elway. You can blame it on Joe Ellis, lack of having an owner, what have you. The first time head coach here in Denver, I'm over it for right now. I mean, there will be another first time head coach in this city at some point. I hope it's not in the near future, but right now Broncos country is thirsty. They're thirsty and they want something to drink. Well, get me the man who has led a team throughout the desert into that water. I want Sean Payton. I know it's been a minute. That argument can be had. Only one Super Bowl with Drew Brees. What the hell happened? Folks, it's not that easy to win football games out there, let alone have a run in the postseason. And Sean Payton has had a lot of success with the Saints. He's had a lot of success wherever he's went, even back to his college days. And I really like that aspect, that he is about developing young coaches as well. Sean Payton, from everything I'm hearing, he likes to give up some control and allow his coaches to coach. I absolutely love it. Just like Jasmine's support. Jasmine coming in with a huge, generous $50 generous super chat. I'm so hesitant to get another first-time head coach. However, I will take DeMeco Ryans over Dan Quinn. I just don't see Dan Quinn turning this team around quick enough. I agree, Jasmine. I'm right there. DeMeco Ryans over Dan Quinn. 100%. And I know that goes against what I just said about the proven commodity, if you will, right? Because Dan Quinn, he was a head coach, right? Didn't work out. But DeMeco Ryans, I would much rather have DeMeco Ryans. He moves the needle for me. At least I need something on the inside. I need like something. He's got that spirit. He's got that heart. He's got that. I feel like I can connect to that a little bit, even though I don't know the guy at all. I just want that splash. And I think you get that with Sean Payton. I think you get that with a DeMeco Ryans even. And now you're starting to talk me into DeMeco Ryans, Nick. I mean, I just want a man to come in here who loves football and who's going to win football games at the end of the day. I don't care how old he is. Just give me that cat, please.
Yeah. Defensive first time. It doesn't matter to me. Get a good catch, good coach in here. Can't be going on 3 coaches in 3 years. That's terrible for the Broncos. So hopefully this next one sticks. And Jasmine also saying we want Sean Payton, and do have some news here coming in. We talked about him a lot today. Might as well be the Mike Kliss podcast today. Mike Kliss had tweeted out that the Broncos interview trio of George Penner, George Payton, and Condoleezza Rice have completed a bunch of interviews. After DeMeco Ryans' interview on Thursday and Dan Quinn on Friday, a second round of interviews with 1 to 3 finalists should be expected next week. So the Broncos are going to have a second round of interviews, and they're going to pick a few people to bring in for that next round following the divisional round of the playoffs.
Interesting. Very curious. And it makes me scratch my head. Dave Glassman, thank you so much, man. Still with a Kansas Let's Ride. Absolutely love that. Your plate there. Makes me very curious about that, because Sean Payton doesn't need to interview twice. So who's the second interview really for, folks? I mean, who's it really for? Are you picking an OC? Are you picking a DC? Are you picking an emergency backup so you don't have egg on your face in case Sean Payton decides to go somewhere else? I don't know. Maybe Sean Payton wants to live in Arizona. It's hard to say, right? I don't think Carolina is a viable option. Houston, no way. Indianapolis Colts, I suppose there's a chance there. But it makes me really curious about that second round of interviews because Sean Payton doesn't need one interview, really. I mean, a conversation, all right. But how formal do you think Sean Payton's interview really was?
I mean, they'll bring him into the facilities at Denver. It's going to be a tour as much as anything. That first one was in Los Angeles. I'm guessing the next wave of interviews will all be in Denver, where they're going to get a lay of the land and talk about what exactly the power dynamic will be and whatnot. So I think he'll have a pretty formal interview with the Broncos. And it sounded like, again, in Kliss's article that he just released about 20 minutes ago, mentioning that the Broncos and Peyton seem to have real strong mutual interest in each other, and that the Broncos are definitely going to be aggressive with that. But then he lists Dan Quinn as one of the big three swings with Jim Harbaugh and Sean Payton as well. So I just a lot of hedging going on. I said it. This will be the third time I've said it this week, but Dan Quinn's not the same caliber coach as those guys. Don't piss on me and tell me it's raining. It's
different tiers. And I like your system because you kind of have said the last few weeks, you've got your different tiers, your top one, your tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. That's exactly how you got to look at it, right? Some of these guys are a poor man's version of whoever the hell it is you love. I mean, that's just the way it is. And now Mike Kliss, again, the Mike Kliss show. Former Stanford coach David Shaw, who the Broncos interviewed. There have been ongoing discussions between Penner and candidates following the interviews. Shaw is a pro-style coach at Stanford, blah, blah, blah. So Shaw's still in the mix. I mean, hey, they could have had just an absolute home run of an interview with Sean Payton yesterday. And then I'm starting to already hope, just total speculation, they're trying to put the rest of that staff together. But maybe that net is still wide, Nick. Maybe it's not just going to be the Dan Quinn, Sean Payton show. You're getting some old candidates resurfacing from a week ago, and they shouldn't be old candidates because they're just a week ago, but it already feels like a lifetime, right?
Yeah, I mean, crazy how fast things move here in the NFL. Damian Clark, Warren, $5 saying, stop using the argument it's hard to win games to turn around. The turnaround happens when we fix that sad offensive line. Hell, Lovie Smith has a ring too.
Touche.
Offensive line needs work. I still argue that the run blocking was worse this year than the pass blocking, and the quarterback has as much blame for the pass issues as the offensive line does. I mean, Russell Wilson was one of the longest time to throw quarterbacks in the NFL this year. And yeah, Lovie didn't win a head coach as a Bears coach. Did Lovie win it as a defensive coordinator underneath Dungy with Tampa Bay? I don't remember exactly that one.
That's a good question.
Not?
Yeah, because he lost to Peyton's Colts, right?
Because he ran the Tampa too. I mean, that's what he brought over, and that was a very much a Tampa Bay one there. So yeah, Rex Grossman lost.
Rex Grossman. When's the last time you thought of Rex Grossman? I absolutely love it, Ken. You're the man. Rex Grossman. Good God. Broncos country needs that splash. We're going to continue to talk about it in KB82. If we get DeMeco Ryans, who would you want as offensive coordinator? Can I throw a crazy one out there because I'm seeing it on Twitter and I don't want to take credit for it, but it's crossed my mind. How about Brian Griese?
He's the quarterback coach with the 49ers right now. Yep. Yeah. That's one that I've thought of as well. Yeah. Brian Griese, I don't think it's crazy. Been the quarterback coach there, obviously did a great job with Brock Purdy out there in San Francisco. So I wouldn't be against it. Maybe it's a little bit early for him in the overall cycle of his coaching career. But if he comes in and DeMeco Ryan says that's his guy, fine. DeMeco also has a lot of ties to 49ers people. I mean, you got LaFleur, who was just fired from the Jets. Maybe he would follow DeMeco over there. You also have, of course, Anthony Lynn, I believe, is the running back coach out there in 49ers. And I know that Broncos country, if they're bringing in a first-time head coach, maybe you want somebody who's a former head coach. I know that Anthony Lynn's time in the Chargers didn't work out great, but it would bring some stability to that unit overall. So I don't know. I mean, those are some guys that stay out to me. Again, it's a connections league as much as anything, not just who's the best candidate, but who do these guys know?
Yeah, man, connection is so important, not only in life, but especially in business, right? I mean, sometimes, folks, it's not about what you know. It is about who you know. And that's just the hard, cold fact of this life. That's why SW Lion coming in here. Another reason to interview Frank Reich. If you don't hire him as a head coach, maybe you just get him as an OC. I hear you there, bro. But listen, Frank Reich's name has been left off of this list on purpose. Otherwise, we would have heard about it by now. I do not think that the Broncos would have chose to interview or consider Frank Reich as a piece in their 2023 puzzle and interview a guy like David Shaw, who's been away from the game for a little bit due to health reasons and stuff like that. That wide net, maybe it's not as wide as you and I would have liked, but the Broncos are trying to cover their bases this time around. Jacob Foster covering his base, joining MHI tonight. Thank you so much, man. Hopefully you and your family are doing well.
Yeah, thank you so much. We appreciate you coming in. We also got Jasmine coming back in saying, can we hear both of your dream team staff with the head coach and coordinators?
Ooh.
Drew Brees. No, I'm just kidding. I know that he was the quarterback coach there for Purdue in the bowl game, right?
Yeah,
I would be here with
interim,
Sean,
right?
interim. I mean, when you bring in Sean Payton, he's essentially going to be the de facto offensive coordinator. So do I care so much who he brings in under him when you have Sean Payton? Not as much. So I'm guessing that maybe this isn't a dream team. I haven't even thought about because again, it's still, I want it to be realistic with the connection. So I'm going to say if it's Sean Payton, he brings in Joe Lombardi, that's fine. Joe Lombardi, the offensive coordinator, he's not the designer. He's not the play caller. He's just helping support Sean Payton in that role. And then on the defensive side of the ball, I mean, for me, I know that he went out not great for Denver, but I still am somewhat sympathetic to Vic Fangio and his tenure in Denver. I mean, their pass rush was horrible because they didn't have a lot of player personnel injuries and stuff after trading Vaughn. The year before they drafted Patrick Surtain, they were playing goddamn Pac-Man Jones at cornerback. So they were just destroyed in the secondary. And his quarterbacks were freaking, Drew Lock and Joe Flacco and Teddy Bridgewater, probably the best of that trio listed there. I mean, it was not great for Fangio. So I have sympathy for him in his time. I'd be happy to have him back at defensive coordinator. I do worry about the locker room dynamics there. Dream Vic Fangio, though, coming back as a defensive coordinator. Realistic dream, maybe Mike Zimmer. I know there's some connections there with Sean Payton and Mike Zimmer. And Mike Zimmer also has connections to George Payton as well.
Yeah, and that name has been floating around Broncos country, I feel like, for a handful of years. Either as it's just an option, not like necessarily the team being connected or anything like that. It's a really interesting question, Jasmine. I'd be curious to hear who yours are. I'm going Sean Payton as head coach. I think Joe Lombardi, that makes natural sense for him to be the OC. You said it. This is going to be Peyton's baby. And whether or not Russ is here for the ride, that all depends on his play. And Sean Payton's going to be calling those plays. Now, defense, you went Vic Fangio, so I'm not going to go Vic Fangio. I'm going to go Ejiro Evero. Maybe Ejiro Evero doesn't get a head coaching job this time around. Look, I don't know that he's the type of man that wants to take the first thing that's offered to him as a head coach. Again, these guys have decisions, and Ejiro Evero, his name is been around in 1 year as a defensive coordinator. It's already gotten all this love for some of the things that the Broncos defense has done. So maybe you can contact Ejiro Evero, the head coach, if you're Sean Payton. Hey, man, love what you did with the defense last year. How about we run it back? I've got some really exciting things that's going to happen with offense and special teams. Jasmine, you didn't ask about special teams. I don't know what the hell to do with special teams. Get the guy who was just here, Jerry Rosberg. He's my special teams guy. All right. Like, let's get that guy in the building. Don't ever put a microphone in front of his face again. I know special teams guys usually speak around Wednesday or Thursday, but it's got to be a unit that's not only going to get the fan base fired up, but a unit and a coaching staff that's going to get the players fired up. And Vic Fangio, beloved as a defensive coordinator, hated as a head coach.
I think he was beloved as a defensive coordinator as the madman behind the curtain rather than in the locker room. We saw Mike McCarthy wearing that Dallas chain dancing around after that Dallas. And that's not Vic. He's behind the curtain.
Vic's not going to be like Wade Phillips all iced out with Aqib Talib.
I don't see that happening. Special teams coordinator, just shout out LeVar Woods, University of Iowa special teams coordinator. He's one of the best in the business. I'd bring him up. That's a name to watch for future college coaching cycles, but we'll see. We got Captain St. Rosberg.
Here's one, Todd Byron Leftwich. He got fired, right? And he was a name that I was throwing out there as at least I think should be a candidate here in the next couple years. Well, he's an offensive coordinator looking for work. Don't know about head coaching interviews. Guys don't usually get head coaching interviews after they've been fired, especially as like an offensive coordinator. It happens where you see a team and a coach decide to go different ways and maybe someone else swoops them up, but it's been a minute.
Yeah, I mean, they really struggled this season, and he was announcing that there was rumors coming out that he was going to get fired before that Dallas Tampa game was even done. So I wouldn't be against it per se, but he probably would have to go down and be a quarterback coach or something for a bit, in my opinion. But we'll see. I have not dug enough into that Tampa Bay season to see how much blame he has. We got Alessandro coming in saying the Saints are going to ask for a ton of cash. Cash is no object. Yeah. So hopefully they ask for cash. The Broncos will give cash instead of draft picks because they got plenty more cash. There's finite draft capital.
Yeah, cash doesn't rule everything around them. Like that's just it, man. And so again, story of kind of today. I'll go ahead and say for Broncos country. No, it wasn't Nathaniel Hackett interviewing with the New York Jets and Robert Saleh. Instead, it's coming from his piece on NOLA.com. That's a New Orleans website. Jeff Duncan providing some feedback for Broncos country with regards to how Sean Payton's interview went on Tuesday, saying, quote, "The interviews with the Texans and the Broncos went well. According to sources, Payton was particularly impressed with the Broncos group, who he met with for several hours. He likes majority owner Rob Walton and the management team he has assembled in Denver. Well, of course he likes them, Alessandro, as you know, because they have fat wallets and fat, deep pockets. I like them too."
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a lot of power, a lot of money there. They should be excited. They can give as much money as they want for that. Hopefully they ask for money. That would be great. And we also had LS saying, okay, so Peyton says no. Who is number 2? The fact that Mike Kliss just mentioned Dan Quinn is one of the hot candidates this cycle. I mean, just read into it, folks. I love DeMeco Ryans. I'd be excited about David Shaw. Raheem Morris would be fine. That's another thing too. These are all really quality coaching candidates. You mentioned Ejiro Evero. He's literally interviewed, I believe, for every single head coaching opening this cycle after 1 year as a DC. He's a very bright future. Going to be a head coach at some point. Maybe not this cycle, but soon. I mean, he's very well sought after for good reason. What he did this season with the Broncos using the penny front and the way they were able to generate pressures was outstanding. People took notice.
Adapt not only to injuries, but trading your best pass rusher and still being able to produce an all-pro Pro Bowl corner in that defense. Very impressive. And just getting to be around him at training camp and asking him questions, at the podium, man, he is so well-spoken and just such a friendly guy. I can only imagine him crushing an interview, right? Some people don't interview well. That's reportedly been the case with Eric Bieniemy. Who knows, man? There's so many candidates out there, and Scott's letting me know. I don't know if you knew this because you guys are on the Falcons beat, but the Falcons are obviously interviewing Vic Fangio. Brian Flores is also a candidate, and Scott's saying talk about 2 completely different styles. That's exactly right. But Vic Fangio, you see that defense all over in the NFL. It's still, the most hot defense I would say out there the last 5 years.
Yeah, 100%. Vic, I mean, he's revolutionized the game. So just how it's played on the defensive side of it right now. But as far as, again, just read the tea leaves, folks. Quinn keeps getting pushed as this number 2 potential big swing. I don't think that's happening by chance. I think that things are, if Sean Payton doesn't happen, be prepared that, the Broncos didn't want to commit draft capital suicide by going for Sean Payton. So they like Dan Quinn just as much. I mean, narratives write themselves, folk. So, and also another thing here is Dan Quinn is the one who most likely secures the future and job security of George Payton, of course. And George Payton's a part of the interview process. So it just things lean into that for me. Maybe that's me being a skeptic. I'd prefer Sean Payton. I would be okay with
George.
Dan Quinn. Fine with Dan Quinn. But I think it's really pushing that way. And Jay Stylus says Jim Caldwell, if we don't get Payton, I think Jim Caldwell would be great candidate as well. My biggest concern with him is the fact that he's been out of the head coaching gig outside of like an offensive assistant for I think it's 5 years now. But getting 3 years with a winning record in Detroit is notable. So
yeah, he should get a ticket straight into heaven because anyone that's in Detroit that long, they're in the deepest recesses of hell, no doubt. And JP4 coming in again saying, put some respect on Jim Caldwell's name. That would be interesting. Again, it was a big staff put together this year, right? With Dom Capers behind the scenes. Bill Kolar behind the scenes. What's that going to look like? Are they still going to be behind the scenes? Are you going to get different guys or gals behind the scenes? And that's what I'm waiting for. I'm waiting for the next female candidate to be the big coaching splash because guys, gals, it's coming. I'm telling you, man, it's so cool to see, especially as like a girl dad, right? I'm all about it. It's really, really cool to see so much diversity on this head coaching search. And I saw a comment out here that was saying, man, I'm bored with this head coaching search. Not me. I was grouchy when I thought it was Jim Harbaugh, but it's exciting, right? You're like, damn, big name, Jim Harbaugh. That's a pretty big name. Sean Payton's got you a little bit nervous right now. Is that the right decision? What's the cost going to be? Is he interested playing silly little games? Does he want to go back to Fox? Vic come back? I mean, I don't think this has been a boring search to say the least. I
No.
think Broncos country is just waiting, and they're like, man, give us something we can hold on to. But the problem is, folks, I don't think they know who they want to hold on to yet.
And before we start to wrap it on up here, thank you everyone for supporting us so much today. Special shout out to Jasmine again, coming in big time, supporting us. Mike Kliss mentioned 1 to 3 candidates for a second round of interview. Who's it going to be, Luke? Who are those 3 candidates?
Sean Payton.
Okay.
Sean Payton, Dan Quinn, and DeMeco. No, because he hasn't been interviewed yet. So I'm not going to say DeMeco Ryans. I'm going to guess a total wild one. Shaw.
I think that's a pretty good guess. I was going to say
did he not list it? He didn't
No.
list
No. He said that there's going to be 1 to 3.
All
I'm
right.
having you commit your
okay. Well,
guess.
he's tweeting about Shaw right now, and that feels weird to me, right? Kind of like those Lassie barks we're always talking about. Like, hey man, what's that, Lassie? Well, pay attention. I mean, they're setting themselves up for a nice exit strategy if Sean Payton doesn't work. I mean, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think that's very smart to think that. And you've got to look at this whole picture. Watch what they do, not what they say. In Broncos country, we're just feverishly trying to figure out who it's going to be, because whoever it's going to be, it's got to be the right person.
Yeah, and the other thing about Kliss talking here is that Peyton's back and doesn't matter who the head coach is. That's a weep for the George Payton, for the Sean Payton people. I don't know how that matters. Maybe it'll change after the draft, but that makes me think that maybe Sean Payton is not as likely. But we'll see. That's just purely trying to put the puzzle pieces together. The 3 that I would say right now for me, I think it's going to be Dan Quinn, Sean Payton for the finalists for the interviews. And since you said David Shaw, I think there's a possibility it's David Shaw, but I'm going to say Jim Caldwell. Heard from a pretty good source that Jim Caldwell really did impress in his interview with the Broncos brass. So maybe they'll bring him back for another interview as well.
Yeah, I would be here for it. What about Jim Caldwell as a DC, man? That my head immediately goes to DC right there. Like, man, I would love to see this defense continue its success and become more and more disciplined and principled and grow. That being said, it's really hard for me to move away from Evero. God, I'd love to see what that guy could do in a year or 2. But Jim Caldwell, are you freaking kidding me? That would be a ton of respect on the defense's name. Michael Brinkiel coming in. Thank you so much. I'm excited for the head coach of the Denver Broncos next week, showing some love to the show. That's assuming it gets announced next week, right, Nick? I mean, I'm hoping Scott and I fly out to Vegas and he drives down to Mobile, and we're at these scouting events and we know who the hell the head coach is, right? I mean, the scouts, they're already putting their work in. They're going to get it done. But unless you know what the head coach is actually looking for, along with that GM, it's a mess.
Yeah. And one more piece of breaking news here before we get on out of here. Tennessee Titans have requested to interview Denver Broncos offensive coordinator Justin Outen for a position on their staff, according to Tom Pelissero. So we'll just leave that one. Maybe they want a tight ends coach. I don't know. He was fine there as tight ends coach in Green Bay. But Tom Pelissero, thank you for the info there. With tweeted about 10 minutes ago about Justin Outen being potentially interviewed with the Tennessee Titans. We'll see what happens. See you later, Outen.
What's up, Kathy?
But appreciate you guys.
Yeah, man, it's weird, right? And you're seeing that too. And I feel a little silly, Nick, because I forgot about it, right? Like, I'm the guy that's already forgotten about Nathaniel Hackett. Of course, he's going to try to coach. Of course, he's going to want a job. Of course, he wants to further his business. I just assumed he'd go crawling back to Green Bay. Maybe he knows something we don't about Aaron Rodgers. I mean, it's the Aaron Rodgers show. Everyone's just living in it, and we're going to have to bear through another offseason. At least we don't have to deal with it. We've got our mess, for better or for worse, with Russ, and we'll have to figure it out. Yeah, it's been a lively show, man. It's been so much fun. I thought initially this would be like the Sean Payton show. It turned into the Mike Kliss show. Mike Kliss giving us some news, man. Some huge news. The second round of interviews are going to come up with, 3 candidates?
1 to 3.
1 to 3 candidates, and then big news out of New Orleans, and read about it at milehighhuddle.com. Chad Jensen wrote it up. A gentleman named Jeff Duncan was talking about how Sean Payton was reportedly super impressed with Greg Penner and the Broncos brass. And how could you not be, right? I mean, you're sitting there in front of Condoleezza freaking Rice, dude. I mean, that's a pretty boss move. It used to be pretty boss when John Elway would roll up and convince Vic Fangio and some little Chicago dive bar that you want to be a head coach. No, now you got some big ballers. No disrespect to John Elway, but Condoleezza freaking Rice and Greg Penner sitting across the table. Oh yeah, and George Payton.
Yeah, pretty wild. And we'll see what happens. Maybe a week from now, Luke, we will know who the head coach is. But for now, we're going to have to do it for Mile High Insiders. Make sure you guys are following Luke and I on Twitter. Luke is at Luke Patterson LP. I am at Nick Kendell MHH. Also, make sure you're following us at MHI_pod and, of course, at Mile High Huddle. If you haven't done so yet, make sure you're joining us on Facebook today, facebook.com/Mile High Huddle and facebook.com/Mile High Huddle pod. And while you're over there on Facebook, make sure you click on the thumbs up. If you're already on one of those pages, hey, we got like 500 people in here enjoying us right now. Click the thumbs up on the way out. It takes 2 seconds. We'd appreciate that. We hopefully would have earned it today with the conversation and the content we provided, but appreciate that. Also, as the ticker says underneath right now, if you're joining us on YouTube today, please subscribe to Mile High Huddle, like this show, and share to your social media accounts. I know that our guy, Scott, has been cutting up things on TikTok for us and posting them on Instagram and TikTok. So we're on the socials, right? I'm not on that Be Real one. I saw a player announce that they're going to enter the NFL draft on their Be Real recently. Did you see that?
I don't even know what the hell that is, dude. Okay. I'm ashamed to say. Like, that's the level of disconnect I am. I was just going to say, damn, Scott and you guys, with all you kids out there with the TikTok, man, I don't even deal with the TikTok. I'm still trying to figure out that whole mess, man. So it's cool to see that, unlike me, Scott's not living under a rock.
Got to figure it out. Got to take care of it. The socials, we're all connected, right? And you guys are connected to us, and we appreciate you. Everyone have a great rest of your day. We appreciate it. Shout out to Scott in the back helping us out. Continue to choose kindness and compassion. Go Broncos.